but coming up to an evil version of himself, obviously, he's going to survive, but, I felt like he was quite vulnerable. And so I think that's why I liked it.
And we are here for another episode of Clone Wars Conversations. This is where myself, Maff, and Dave go through all the episodes of the 2008 animated Clone Wars series. And we are currently at the finale of Season 6. So this is Season 6, Part 4, Episodes 11, 12, and 13, Yoda's Special Arc. And to clarify to anyone who has not tuned in before, I've seen all these episodes a couple times before. Dave has watched them all once or so, and Maff has never seen them before. So Maff has seen all of Rebels, all the live action stuff, but he's not seen the finale of Clone Wars or any of the Bad Batch, so we will not be spoiling those things. So on this episode, it is the finale of Season 6. So this all came out in, I think it was March 2014. So that is, this season is now finished. So in 2014. And it was like, yep, Clone Wars is gone. Bye, Disney have taken over. See ya. And then there was rumblings and then eventually announcement of Star Wars Rebels, which came out, I believe, 2015. So this is where Clone Wars actually ended fully. So I know I'm jumping ahead a bit, but what I do genuinely want to ask, we'll talk about each of these individual episodes because there's a lot to talk about. I just want to get this question out because I think I'll forget. How do you feel if there wasn't a Season 7, if there wasn't anything else, if Rebels still existed, but there wasn't a Season 7 of Clone Wars and that you were like, this was the finale, how would you have felt about this being the end? Now, I'll come to you first, Dave, because obviously you know what's in Season 7, but without saying any of that, how would you feel if this was the end? Because that's what I think experienced.
Not as bad as when I watched Rise of Skywalker. But I wouldn't feel great. It's not really a satisfying ending. Or actually, no, I'm going to reverse back a bit. There is something satisfying about that third episode. However, it doesn't feel like a finish, and I guess it's an artificial finish as well, isn't it? Because it finished because money ran out and it got cancelled, but it feels like there's more. And I think I was quite lucky in one respect because I'd heard people go on about how great Clone Wars was. I'm sure I must have told you this before. And then I watched the movie. I'm like, the fuck is everyone on? Like, this is shit. So I remember I spoke to you a few times and you said, I kind of feel like if with a load of series, if someone says, "Oh yeah, you've got to stick with it for 4 seasons," and then it gets good,
yeah, that pisses me right off. I'm not going to watch
it.
I'm
sorry, I'm not investing all that time. But I think there was something that forced me to go back and watch that first season, and actually, I found there was more even going from the movie to the season 1 episodes. There was enough to keep me interested, but here, yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's a real satisfying end. So I'm glad that I kind of jumped on when there were 7 seasons.
And so, Maff, this is obviously your first foray into Clone Wars. So if this was the finale, how would you have felt about it?
I didn't mind how it finished because it's still open. We know that there's more story to come. You kind of finish on with Yoda and kind of what happens in that last episode. So, I mean, it finishes with leaving you a lot of questions like, what the fuck, But I didn't mind it because the thing is, I don't know how season 7 is going to finish, but at the time, we know where the story's going to go. Now they're filled in with obviously a season 7 and Rebels and other bits and bobs in between as well. But in a way, it couldn't really end unless they were taken up to, because we'd have had the films out at that point as well. So they've kind of tied into the films, but still left it open. I mean, we've got Obi-Wan season 1 and season 2 coming out at some point. Talking of the Clone Wars movie, Jeremy Allen White is going to be playing Rotter.
Yes, that has been announced. Rotter the Hutt is going to be in one of the future Star Wars projects, potentially.
How that'll work, I don't know.
The movie, and he's voicing Rotter the Hutt. So,
I mean, is it going to be CGI or is it going to be in a slug suit?
I think it's quite likely it's CGI, considering how all the other Hutts look.
As I say, when I finished watching it on Saturday night, I thought, I don't mind, because it's... The thing is, there's so many stories out there still, comics, movies, other TV series. So it's never going to end as such. Even, that we're going to get another 3 more films, apparently, maybe.
Well, there's apparently going to be another Rey trilogy. There's apparently a separate trilogy being made. And then there's also the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, the new Jedi Order movie, and one other Dave Filoni movie, which everyone thinks is going to be basically Heir to the Empire. So there's apparently 6. And then there's 3 that are loosely in development but might actually be cancelled.
Isn't one of them meant to kind of follow on from where Skeleton Crew is going to go to maybe? And,
I don't know anything about Skeleton Crew and where it's going to go, but I suspect Heir to the Empire is going to be a big old movie which is going to connect all of the Mandoverse stuff. It's going to put them all together. And I think Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be a film that's going to both kind of get the Mandalorian story to prologue Heir to the Empire with the Thrawn stuff, while also introducing people who are very casual Star Wars fans who've never seen any of the series, probably some of the older generation who just go to the movies to see Star Wars when they come out. And it's going to introduce them to them. And I think what's going to happen is all the series and the movies are all going to be this big event, the Heir to the Empire stuff, and then they're going to pop up. And Skeleton Crew, they're probably going to show up as a little thing in one scene, like they come and help them at the end or something. But I think obviously Mandalorian and Ahsoka and the Ghost Crew are going to be major players in this. That's what I think anyway.
I mean, you look at the going up to Endgame with Marvel.
Yeah.
They had a plan. And up until that point, majority of the films, just maybe 1 or 2 not so brilliant, but most of them were really good.
Yeah.
After that, it fell off. But if that's the idea of getting all these series and all, and bringing in I was watching something and it shows in Rogue One when all the ships turn up, the Ghost is there and that. So if they're going to start tying things in, so stuff that now I'm actually enjoying and experiencing, and trying to tie it all together with the 2 guys, John Favreau and Dave Filoni, kind of at the helm, I believe they're going to do a good job of it because they seem to care.
Well, John Favreau obviously launched the MCU with Kevin Feige. He launched the Iron Man. It was his idea. It was Feige's idea, but John really helped him start that, and that's why Disney gave him the keys to basically do it with Star Wars.
Yeah, but that's why I feel that in a way, if it had have ended here, it's fine. I'm excited to see what we get next, but at the same point, it's still so open because there's so many more stories. It will never have a bit where it goes, that's it, no more. There's always going to be, even Acolyte, there's bits of Acolyte where it kind of finished and we'll probably never get a season 2. But it's opening up where they could do something, they could go back, they could do something more with this. So, yeah, I was fine. I'd been happy with it.
Well, that's very optimistic of you. That's very nice. Well, so I would say this also came out the same year that Disney bought Lucasfilm and announced the canon reset. So I think a lot of salty fans who hated Disney canon from the start were because they finished this and thought, oh, everything's being erased, nothing matters. Because Clone Wars treads a really weird line, because although Lucas with the prequels completely ignores pretty much all of Legends, aside from using the name Coruscant, which Timothy Zahn came up with, I believe, aside from that and like 1 or 2 other minor things, the prequels basically retcons loads about Legends from what people built from the original trilogy. And then the Clone Wars, he does retcon a few things, like what happened with Grievous. There's a thing in the micro series about him getting his chest crushed by Mace Windu. That's in Legends. That's not in this. But like, there are contradictions, but there are also lots of things like the whole stuff at the end with Bane, which is directly linking to Legends. So Clone Wars, it sits in a really weird place. But I think a lot of people are upset because this got cancelled partway through a season. There's unfinished episodes, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then there's also certain stories which didn't get finished for a long time, like Ahsoka, like Maul, like things like that. Like, what happens to Ahsoka. If you now can't watch anymore, you'd be like, oh, there's a chapter missing, but I know where Ahsoka ends up. Whereas a lot of us literally are like, are we ever getting Ahsoka again? So that's part of it. But I do agree. I think these episodes, they don't finish something off perfectly. They have enough of Forcey stuff, and I think a lot of the stuff that connects to episode 3 enough, where from here to where Revenge of the Sith starts, it feels a lot closer than it has in previous episodes. So let's delve in straight into episode 1. So, well, the 11th episode of the season, but the first episode of this arc. Although it's kind of the previous episode, the Sifo Dyas episode, is kind of like a prologue to these, which I quite like. But voices. So this is where Yoda hears Qui-Gon's voice and is distracted. So the Jedi worry about him, and Ki-Adi-Mundi thinks that he's like losing his mind to the Sith, or he's potentially being like controlled, and it's all about sort of Yoda trying to fight with his instincts and listen to the Jedi Council and try and work out what to do before trying to escape with Anakin, or rather getting Anakin to help distract him, which I've got a note here saying that Yoda's funny, and a lot of people don't get that. So just we can talk about as much or as little of this episode as possible. I think the next two have got a lot more weight to them. But I come to you first, Dave. What do you think of this episode voices? And did you remember anything about this arc at all?
I remembered the end, the last episode, and all 3 episodes kind of feel like one thing.
They do.
You know, it just feels like one stretched out episode. But honestly, the more content I watch, and again, because I'd binged through it the first time, just remember the highlights, but going through it more methodically now, the more I watch, the more I just think, Yoda, you're not actually all what you cracked up to be, you know. So the first thing when Qui-Gon Jinn, you know, says, Yoda, I have a particular set of skills, and it's like unmistakably Liam Neeson, and Yoda's 100%. Like, who's that? No, who is it? It's like, fuck off, Yoda. It's Liam Neeson. We can all hear that it's Liam Neeson. So yeah, it just made him look very, very silly. And I almost think, what has he been doing for 900 years? Because it seems like all the tricks and stuff, well, luckily, you know, Qui-Gon's going to teach him this bit, but he doesn't actually seem to be on top of anything, really, and just bumbling his way through. And I'm like, okay, I didn't remember feeling this way when I went through it the first time. But again, like I say, because I was blasting through and I remembered that tie-in to the prequels and, you know, the whole Force Ghost thing. It's like, oh, fucking hell, you know, they've explained it. And whereas the Midichlorians, I didn't want that level of explanation. However, this seems okay. It's like a skill, you know, it's a way that you can tap into the Force and kind of live on. And then through Qui-Gon's teachings, he can pass that on to other people. But like I say, Yoda's been around for ages, but he doesn't seem to have the one-up on anyone.
No. He's a pretty good fighter, but he does. And when you see what he actually got up to for the last sort of 200 years, a lot of it's just been training younglings. It's because he's like quite old, and he goes on the odd mission that requires him and like stretch his legs essentially. But a lot of the time he's just training younglings. Like you see him in Attack of the Clones, and I love that version of Yoda. And I think that's what a lot of people think about in the universe of Yoda. They remember being young and having him like having a good time and laughing and stuff with them and being silly. Like in Attack of the Clones, where he's like, "Lost a planet, young Master Kenobi has. How embarrassing!" And they're all like giggling and stuff, and it's like that was so cute, and that's what Yoda is like quite a lot. But you see,
this is a massive conspiracy that's going to overthrow the Jedi and lead to lots of people slaughtered. Go on, Yoda, you have a fucking laugh about it.
Have a little giggle. Have a little giggle. But Maff, what did you think of this first episode and about Yoda really in this?
Well, Liam Neeson obviously is quite odd. It is out, you know, when he does speak to him, and it's like, you know, maybe you're just going a bit senile. Maybe he's got to that point where, you know, he's kind of losing his marbles, but, you know, who you know. But I found that the council seemed to jump on him very quickly. Because I know that the council members, but you would say Yoda's kind of the main one, you know. Who would be second in command if he was to kind of, that's the thing.
Mace Windu. So both he and Mace Windu are technically Grand Masters of the Jedi Council. So what happened was, there's always been a Jedi Council Grand Master, but Yoda eventually became it, and he's so old that no one else could ever become it. So they've basically got two. So they've got Yoda, who's essentially the honorary, almost like the Queen, and then you've got the Prime Minister, almost. So Mace Windu actually does a lot of the doing stuff, but Yoda's kind of above him technically and has like ultimate veto and things. So that's generally how it is. When Yoda's not about it, is Mace.
It does come across that he's kind of in charge, but the part me thinking, because he's human, so his life experience must be completely different to the rest of them.
Yeah.
Now, I don't like Turnip Head,
Kaidimundi, yeah.
Kaidimundi.
No one does, he's a dickhead.
Literally.
Yeah.
And straight away, you were like, it was like you were like doing an emperor, kind of rubbing his hands up, like, we don't trust him now. Let's like shove him off, and it felt as if he looked at that point of I could take his place, and that instead of being supportive and everyone like, there is that nice moment of where they all kind of meditate with him, and they all kind of get down, and I thought, that's really nice. The fact that you've just spent 5-10 minutes slagging him off and saying he's past his day, and we can't trust him. But then they do all come together. And that. So it was a nice part, but I did feel that, a few of them kind of looked as if say, are we going to replace him now? Are we going to scoot him off? Which is not what I would have expected the council to really do.
Yeah, the war has really affected a lot of them in different ways. I mean, Kaidimundi's always been a bit like that. He's a dickhead. He's like, I say that not just to be derogatory about his head. I generally think as a person he's a dickhead. And it's because he is so bland and so dogmatic and so irritating. And in the book I mentioned before, The Living Force, all about the Jedi Council a year before Phantom Menace, Kaidimundi in that is like being taken the mick out of because he's so boring and dull and annoying. And he's the one who says, the Sith couldn't have come back. They've been extinct for 1,000 years. And he's the one who's always the kind of the poster child of what's wrong with the Jedi Order, how they have really lost their way, where they're so self-righteous and they think they're so much better than everyone that they genuinely can't see beyond anything. And I quite like in the second episode, it does go into the hubris of the Jedi, which I do want to tackle a little bit. But in this first episode as well, so Yoda, as you rightly pointed out, Maff, Kaidimundi says that about Yoda, says about the dark side. Obi-Wan says that they were all apprenticed by Yoda. He does then a full sensory deprivation tank and gets close to death, to which Obi-Wan gets him out of. And then, God, my voice is going all wheezy, sorry about that.
You went all Darth Vader for a moment then.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy. I was like turning on the camera.
You're just going to die.
I know. No. I mean, he's always obviously Return of the Jedi. But then he goes off to Dagobah. Anakin helps him escape. And then he has the Order 66 vision. So anything you want to say about, we've got essentially the Anakin side of things and then the vision side of things. So, I mean, Anakin was technically first. Do either of you want to mention anything about Anakin and Yoda? Go on, Maff, then. Take us home.
It was really nice the fact that, he's on bed rest, which Yoda kind of sees that I'm kind of prisoner.
Yeah.
If you're going to make an escape, who would you pick? Shall I have, Obi-Wan? No, because he would just dob me in. Who's the best person? Who's going to break the rules? Anakin Skywalker. And it was just that interaction between them really kind of, I think it built an awful lot. And it's like, it's like, I can remember going back and, being with my grandma, and we would get into trouble at times, and we'd egg each other on. And it was a bit like that kind of, right, come on then, let's go do this, and let's, break the rules a bit. But again, he was the right person to pick. And he knows, Anakin does kind of question and say, well, are you sure we should do this? And he's like, yeah. He says, all right, let's go for it. And it was just, as I say, that interaction between them were brilliant. I loved it.
Amazing. Dave, anything to add about that? And from that as well, the vision that Yoda had.
Yes, I mean, you're basically stuffed, aren't you? If you end up outside of the clique, if you end up outside of the Jedi, you're basically fucked. So we saw it with Ahsoka.
Yep.
She gets accused. That's it. Screwed. And even Yoda finds himself on the outside there. So it is interesting. I did feel like the animation when he was in the sensory deprivation tank, he had that Kermit the Frog look about him. I don't know what it was. He just big massive tank and this little tiny Yoda there. So, but yeah, I thought that was okay. And the vision, remind me, when
this is
the
Order 66 happen, and so Maff may not remember as much because half of what you saw is in Revenge of the Sith in slightly different ways. There's two parts. So there's the third episode. So in the second, third, and first episode, there are all flashes of what happens in Revenge of the Sith. In all three, but in different ways. So sorry, Dave, yeah, Order 66, you saw this, and Shark T's death, which is seemingly the current canon death for Shark T. That's the closest we get.
Right. So it was the first one, though, where we saw evil Yoda, isn't it?
That was the
second one.
That was the second one. Yes.
Yeah. That's on Dagobah, isn't it?
No, that's on... So yeah, it's... Go on my notes. So the second episode, it's when, he fights himself, I believe... It is Dagobah, because that's where he meets the Force priestesses.
Because he goes into the cave.
Yeah. Sorry, it's because he goes into he goes beyond Dagobah and then comes out. And 100%.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite funny where he sort of battles him, and I like all those bits, and again the shadows of things that we originally saw Luke go into the cave in Empire, and you see here Yoda's done it as well. It's when where it's going to lose me. It's where the Force has some kind of physical manifestation of something, and it comes out with all these different. So
that's episode 2. Let's go straight into it. Destiny. Yeah. So, what do you not like about this? So, it's the Force priestesses, the five of them, which is confusion, anger, joy, serenity, and sadness. So, what lost you about all this?
Well, basically, there's 5, but they're basically the 7 dwarfs, aren't they? Almost, and just again those aspects, or was it Inside Out, the Disney movie, the animated one as well? You just have these extremes, and of course they've got those like old Academy. I don't know if you remember, but the particular faces, and one's really happy, one's really sad, one's angry, and it's just. It just loses me when it goes into that. I can buy that it's this mystical thing, this intangible force, but it's when they're physically manifested as something. That's when I just don't. It just loses me completely.
What about you, Maff? Do you feel the same or different?
Two things. First, Order 66, when you just see the vision. This annoys me with Yoda. It's like we've just done a big arc about Sapadius and about this whole thing. That surely that's a point when you go back to the council and said, look, we need to do something about the clones, and that I've just had this Force vision. It's serious. We need to do something about it. But no.
Well, he's told not to. He's told towards the end it is that you basically. They basically say to him, "We've shown you the future," and he's like, "What can we do?" And he's like, "They're like, you can't really do anything." But there is hope in an unexpected place. Like, hope can come in unexpected ways that are often hard to see. And it's basically going, it's too deep. They even say, because remember he says, is this the power of the dark side? She's like, this is barely a fraction of what the dark side has right now. And he's like, he's already got all this. And that's what, again, links to Revenge of the Sith. Is almost like, what could Yoda realistically have done? He would have he would have said to the Senate, you need to destroy the army of the Grand Republic because I had a vision they're going to kill all the Jedi. And then Palpatine would go, well, don't be silly. Didn't you agree to the commission of it? And then all the Jedi Council would be brought in and they'd all go, yeah. And they'd all go, yeah, but Yoda is like 900, isn't he? Maybe we should give Yoda retirement. And can you imagine Palpatine convincing everyone to get Yoda a retirement? That is what would happen, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
one guy couldn't do it.
I will say with the Force apparition, I think what might have worked better instead of the 5 of them is if there'd have been one of them with like a 5 head that kind of switch. Yeah, I think that would have probably worked better because in a way they're all kind of the same. And in fact, I think they missed out on 2 of them anyway when it kind of goes through it. There's only really 3 of them that he actually interacts with, and that. So it's weird, and they mentioned midichlorians and that, so I thought, oh, here we go. Loads of people will be jumping on the bandwagon going, it's not my Star Wars. And that, but
well, when it was owned by George Lucas, people didn't. I mean, people said that when the prequels came out, and then they kind of simmered after a little while, And then when Clone Wars is out, people had kind of grown to love it, because this came out nearly 10 years after Revenge of the Sith.
See, the thing with the midichlorians, it's like tracking down Jedi and things like that. Surely, wouldn't they just go around and just take everyone's blood and then be able to find out who's Force sensitive, and then, and then you get Hitler rounding them up into camps and things like that.
Don't they do that in Kenobi? Don't the Jedi Hunters, when they go to Tatooine, don't they try? I can't remember if they take people's blood, but I know they do try and find some Jedi. But I guess that the amount of people, I mean, Coruscant has 1 trillion people already, and that's not even everyone. That's like London compared to the UK. It's like the amount of time it would take and the database you'd need. I guess that's kind of why Imperials have like the identification codes, which is what Solo has, I guess. But it is a good point. I mean, the midichlorian thing does open up a bigger can of worms than I think anyone's really been able to get a hold of, except in the Mandoverse where they call it M count, and they're like, basically the midichlorians make it so that cloning's really difficult. And I'm like, that's probably the first reasonable use of midichlorians I think I've seen in the canon, to be honest.
That kind of then ties into Last Jedi, is it?
Yes. Well, it's Rise of Skywalker. It's Last Jedi's Snoke, but yeah, the Rise of Skywalker when you see them all in the vats on Exegol.
Yeah. Where he's been trying to obviously call himself and that. But yeah, no, I didn't mind it, but 12 kind of went past very quickly, episode 12. And then all of a sudden, then you get into episode 13 where it really kind of...
Well, before we get to 13, so we're still on 12. So I just want to say, with the priestesses, I agree with both of you. I think the priestesses are a bit misguided. I think what the faces were meant to represent is, I thought of, the old school theatre masks where you've got the smiling face and the sad face.
Yeah.
I think that, and I think what it's meant to show, again, this is a George Lucas kind of stretch, which I think it was kind of a half-baked idea, which was trying to show that because the Force is this... It kind of says they are the Force, but it also kind of says, no, they can do the thing that Qui-Gon can do and what Yoda will eventually do and what Obi-Wan will eventually do, which is essentially become a physical manifestation in a way. But it is that kind of thing. It's like, so did they become a physical manifestation? If so, were there 5 living Force priestesses that took on the embodiment of emotions? Is it there was one of them and they were just playing tricks and just kind of having fun for some bizarre reason? Or is it actually the Force itself? Which is it? Because none of them actually really make that much sense. So I agree. It's a misguided. It didn't really work. You just needed someone to guide Yoda. And I'm like, you could have just had... Why do you not just have Qui-Gon just floating there? They already made his image thing. Have him floating next to him. Go, oh my God, Qui-Gon, you can manifest your body. He goes, no, only on this planet, or only because I'm being helped by a being unknown on this one guide in this specific area, I can. As soon as you leave this area... I can only be a voice.
Well, question that.
Yeah.
Just like we have seen many times Force ghosts. In fact, I think might have been off air. We mentioned about in the council, it's a Force ghost. But yet, the way Qui-Gon kind of talks is as if say, and they talk about him saying that he's just gone back into the life, into the Force, into the cosmic universe. So. Have they not seen Force ghosts at this point?
No, the Force ghosts don't exist. And as of this point, in canon, allegedly, they don't exist. So it's really I suspect thousands and thousands of years ago there were, but as of now, that's why they all say it's impossible. That's why Yoda's going mad. And that's why Yoda's told, don't tell anyone, because if it got out that a Force user can basically become immortal, that would cause mass panic. Then really the Jedi Order would probably crumble under the weight of that knowledge. So Yoda has to hide it to himself. Qui-Gon's doing it, and then he teaches Obi-Wan to do it, because the only reason they're even let in on the secret is because the Sith... It's basically the Sith's plan over the 1,000 years was so good and so unbeatable, it completely unbalances the entire galaxy for like 20 years, nearly 25. And the only way to unbalance this is literally one guy, Luke Skywalker, and a weird chain of events, and just people being in the right place at the right time for him, and one being Obi-Wan and one being Yoda. And I think that's the kind of the idea of when they get taught, like, what their value is they only get let in on the secret because of that. But the problem is, the more you explain it, how does Anakin become a Force ghost? That's the biggest plot hole that gets entered in this.
Also, right, so they're going to the idea is to train Yoda to become a Force ghost.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of training that he has to do that. And Qui-Gon's done this as well, but why Qui-Gon? Did they basically just want, like, Qui-Gon, we need you so you can deliver this message to Yoda to then get him to do?
Well, I'm going to go to Dave. Let's see what Dave thinks about this. Because I have some theories. But Dave, what do you think about the Force ghosty stuff and anything about Qui-Gon and kind of destiny? What do you think about all that jazz?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure outside of Clone Wars, I knew that Qui-Gon was the one who broke the seal, if you like, with yeah. So where do I know that from?
Revenge of the Sith, right at the end, Yoda says to Obi-Wan, he says, I've got a message from your old master, learn to commune with the dead I have, because Obi-Wan has to know how to do it in the original trilogy, because obviously Lucas was just like, Force Ghost, let's just put him in there, in the, and it was like, how do we retroactively fit that in? And so it was Revenge of the Sith, Qui-Gon taught me. So how do we fit that in?
Yeah.
So it's several retroactive. But I think in universe, it's just because Qui-Gon's open to the idea of the separation of the cosmic force and the living force. Living force is us, cosmic force is the universe. You become one, they feed off each other. It's a very philosophical-y thing, more so introduced in the prequels. But sorry, Dave, Qui-Gon and etc. and Force Ghosts. Anything you want to say about that?
No, just I do appreciate that, like I say, I don't need to the level of the Midichlorians explaining. However, this, they're not just being, Force Ghosts are a thing, but not for everyone. Not for all you Order 66 lot, just for the few that we like, in the original trilogy. So, like say, how did Anakin do it? Well, I tell you what, I saw the other day. It was someone who posted, one of these YouTube shorts or something, and they said, watch Return the Jedi for all these years, and I used to think the Return of the Jedi was Luke Skywalker, but it's not Return the Jedi, it's Anakin Skywalker. It's him coming back to the light side. Now, I still think the amount of dastardly things Darth Vader did, I'm not sure, but maybe there'll be a comic to explain how they taught Anakin just before he died, I think
his high midichlorian count is probably the only way you can hand wave it away, because they do say in Phantom Menace his midichlorian count's even higher than Master Yoda's, who was previously thought to have the highest ever, or the highest of a generation. So it's like, I think that's
he just came into being, didn't he?
Yeah, so if he was like created by the midichlorians, kind of, then you can it is still annoying, and the fact they go through this level of depth, even if they just had a one-liner to go, do you have to learn this power? And then one of the priestesses says, you need to learn it, but like the higher your midichlorians, the easier the lessons are. Stuff like even that.
Yeah,
you could kind
of innately. Some people are just good at it naturally. Like people who are good at sport or musical instruments and stuff, and just pick it up really quickly.
Exactly.
Could be like that.
100%. But I want to say, before we move on to the third episode, I do want to also mention the Yoda fighting himself bit. So there was one thing, when he was fighting himself, I thought it was okay, but I was just like, this is just it's a bit like the Superman Zod fight, where it's just two equally strong people punching themselves into each other.
Or Superman, an evil Superman. or Superman and Clark Kent in the... That's an amazing fight. I love it.
I watched that the other day, and they were like, wow, I forgot.
It's so good.
It still holds up.
Yeah.
And, I haven't seen it. No, not seen it.
What?
I haven't seen the Superman movies. Like, I've seen the first one.
Oh, we are going to have to remedy that somehow.
We can.
The thing is, it is. I mean, technically, it's Pizarro that is fighting, and that. But back then they don't kind of label it that. It's just Clark and Superman, and that. But it holds up so well, and there are them points where, you see Clark, and obviously Chris Reeve is playing both sides, but you see Clark being that shriveled kind of person, and then he does do that Superman thing of all suddenly he just goes, you think, oh shit, you're in trouble now, mate.
I have seen quite a few of those clips, and I do like that stuff, but in this I just found especially because animated, it takes away from a bit. When it's live action, the same person fighting the same person, you can appreciate the cinematography.
It was very Schmeagol, wasn't it?
It was, but I liked the fact, although I thought it was the fighting itself was a bit rubbish, I did like the fact that after he had the lesson, the whole point that the priestess was saying was, Yoda, you are not as smart as you think. You don't know everything. He's like, I've beaten my demons. I have no weaknesses. I'm okay. And the whole lesson is, no, you even thinking that about yourself is actually one of the most problematic things the Jedi have. So I know that, Dave, you mentioned you quite liked that Yoda fight. Is that one of the reasons you liked it?
No, I think the reason I liked it, and I haven't thought about it until this very second that you just asked me, I think it's the fact that we see Yoda, he's never really vulnerable. He's never in that vulnerable state, even when he's fighting Dooku, and he's bouncing around like a jumping bean or something. You never feel like Yoda's in any real danger. But coming up to an evil version of himself, obviously, he's going to survive, but, I felt like he was quite vulnerable. And so I think that's why I liked it.
You see, I think he actually looks more vulnerable after that. The scene where he kind of comes through and he sees Ahsoka, he sees Obi-Wan, he sees Dooku, and like Dooku turns around and he's like, oh, Yoda, and he's like, Father Christmas kind of thing. And he looks completely out of his depth there. And it's like, I don't know what to do.
Well, I think one physically took its toll and then made him look introspectively, and then the other one spiritually took his toll and then also made him look outwardly. So I think both of the scenes you both spoke about really do break Yoda and show him more vulnerable.
And then it is that case of, no, this cannot be. I have to go. It'd be nice to live in this moment, but it's not real. And there's so much more at stake. I have to go back. And he kind of faces demons, but he's really going to face his demons when he goes back.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, again, this is a kid's show, and we literally look at when Ahsoka's dead and like dying and like saying like we've been murdered and we're dying, and he sees like a dead child next to him, the youngling from the youngling arc. And it's like, this is really messed up. Like, this is, again, a kid's show. And the next episode's got a bit in it as well, which I've got written down, which is like, this is a kid's show. But it's like, again, some of the things spoken about, these 3 episodes, I love them, personally. These are some of my favourites because they're so different and out there. But like, this is the finale of basically a kid's show. And you're like, I don't know how even 14-year-old me would actually process these things. Because there's like a lot of quite deep philosophy and also a lot of subtext. I mean, I've seen these episodes 3 times and I'm still finding new things about them. And I'm like, how, before we get into the Bane bit, because that's the crescendo, but like, how would you guys think about that? I'll come to you first, Maff. Like,
it's a bit like watching Shrek. And that.
Okay, good comparison, I think.
Okay. Right. I'll watch it with the kids. The kids laugh and they find certain things funny. But then, a bit like a pantomime as well, there's stuff there for the adults. There's stuff there only the adults and the proper fans, or Star Wars fans in this case, will get and will pick up on and go, that's clever, I like that. Then when you watch it in 10 years' time again, and you go back and think, oh, I didn't notice that. And then again, you go another 10 years' time, there's certain things, it's like, again, it's an onion. There's so many layers to it. Each time you kind of watch it and you see stuff, you realise, actually, there's a bit more to it I can take away. So I think it's clever. It's got the cuteness for the kids, and that even if you put aside the mass genocide and killing of all the Jedi, but the kids don't see that as such. They just see, all right, they see there's a sad moment with Ahsoka. Don't really understand what's going on as such, but Ahsoka's obviously not well. But for us, it hits us and it's like, oh shit, and that, and it then leaves you that thing of Yoda. What are you going to do about this? And the answer is nothing really.
Well, he's going to go off. He's going to help Luke. That's what this becomes. This is him changing into that. But I'll come. I did like as well the fact that we have briefly mentioned on Dagobah, the fact that it really felt like the movie. Where when you see the trees and the swamps, and then when he goes into the under the tree down into the cave, is like when
Luke goes down and faces Vader, and I just thought that it's a nice little tie. It made it feel like a comfy pair of shoes. I've seen this before. I know what's kind of going to happen, but it just, again, when we say about when this finished, will you be happy with it? Well, yeah, because it does kind of tie in certain things. So it does make you feel like, okay, yeah, I'm happy with that, because I've still got other stuff to watch afterwards anyway.
That's a very good point. Yeah, totally. And I want to give it to you, Dave, last thing about these sort of first 2 episodes. Everything that Maff said, and also adding to when I said it being a kids show, taking a small amount from the next episode, is there's a bit where they say about the Sith sacrifice Jedi in this chamber. And you're like, what is it? You're talking literally about ritualistic sacrifice due to religious warring cults. And this is a kids show where the prior episode, you were literally showing dead children. It's like, I don't know if you have anything else to say about that before we delve into the Bane stuff.
Well, no, I think just to echo what you guys have said, the adult themes, but these are, I wouldn't say absolute peak Clone Wars episodes, but they're definitely a high standard, aren't
they? Like a B, not quite A tier, like a B tier.
Yeah, so A minus, B plus, or something like that, where it really, one of the reasons we started this whole little project, I felt it, and then in discussing some of the things with Maff as well, I kind of wanted Maff to feel that kind of, that when you watch the prequels, the Clone Wars makes them better. And I think it's just added all of those layers. And so even though there was some lumpy episodes to get here, where I was like, I thought Series 4 onwards was brilliant. It's not. These are much more closer to the top.
I agree.
It does. It fills in some of them questions that you didn't realise you were asking. But then it's like, that makes more sense. And that, like when we went back and we watched Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, they hit harder. You realise, actually, I kind of get what's going on.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I can't. I've seen Revenge of the Sith about 40 times, and I'm still excited to rewatch it.
It keeps popping up on the YouTube algorithm of obviously Anakin and
there's more to come.
You're my brother.
Season 7 has got some very good stuff. Just gonna say,
I can't wait for certain things and but it's like I keep going, no, can't watch it yet. Can't watch it. I want to go back and watch it.
It's going to be so fun when we all watch that. But I know we've got the final episode. So we've got the final episode of season 6. It's called Sacrifice, episode 13, third of the 3-part arc of Yoda's little journey, and he goes to the planet Moraband. So Moraband is a Sith homeworld. However, it's also known by the name Korriban. Now, Korriban is what it was called in Legends. It was in the video games. It was in the Tales of the Jedi, like one of the really old Sith comics from 94. And so that's what it was originally called. And Lucas went, like the idea, don't like the name Korriban. Let's call it Moraband. And so that's why it's called Moraband in the canon. And then George Mann, in one of the High Republic books, noted that it's called Korriban. It is an old way of saying it. So in the Star Wars canon now, in olden times, in air quotes, it's called Korriban, and in modern times, it's called Moraband, just to make it really confusing.
Is that where in
Knights of the Old Republic?
It's in Knights of the Old Republic, because
it's very big in that game. It's a huge part of that.
That's obviously with Bane, because we see Bane anyway.
100%. Yeah, it's all that. So and that's what I want to clear up, because the Sith homeworld of that. But I want to say I've got a little bit, but right just before we get into the Bane, I'm still teasing you guys. Just before, I've got a little bit of information about the Force priestesses, which I did some research on it, and I knew about this anyway, about what the wills are. So I want to explain that a little bit before I get my lost in Bane. So the wills are what the Force priestesses kind of speak for the wills. Now, what the wills are, WHILLS, you hear them mentioned in Rogue One, because you've got guardians of the wills, Baze Malbus and Chirrut Imwe, the blind monk, and his friend with the chain gun. They're the guardians of the wills on Jeddah. So the wills are essentially, they are in canon responsible for writing the opening crawls of the movies, okay? Because the original idea for George Lucas was the Wills were actually a narrator or a group of narrators, these ethereal beings telling the story of Star Wars, hence Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away.
Like the Watcher in the Marvel universe.
Exactly. 100% like a Watcher in the Marvel universe. And so what George Lucas, as he was developing the first film, he was like, this isn't really working. I'm going to tweak it. And as he was changing the role of the narrator a lot more, he changed what was the kind of the will of the Force a lot more into the will of the Force, in a sense of this ethereal power is allowing you to do this or guiding you through this, instead of it being like a narrator telling you to do it, if you see what I mean. So the wills of the Force is essentially almost like the personificational consciousness of the ethereal Force. And the Force priestesses are meant to be a version of one of those manifestations. Okay, so that's why it's all sort of confusing and things. And they essentially, the wills record galactic events. So the kind of idea of it is all of the Star Wars movies and all the Star Wars series and everything, we are essentially being shown that by these beings called the wills that are showing it. And in the books, Certain Point of View, there's one chapter in each which is by the wills, and it's them talking about big galactic events or like what impact this book will have on the galaxy, things like that. So it's quite a big ethereal thing. And I also wanted to mention, because we talk about midichlorians, the midichlorians essentially are the things that communicate with the wills. So the midichlorians are the thing that essentially connects an organic being to the Force, this ethereal being. But also George Lucas, another reason why people go, oh, the Disney sequels are rubbish, and they have their flaws. And if they go, oh, George Lucas would have made them better, George Lucas has said that he specifically wanted to dive deeper into the midichlorians in the sequel trilogy if he made it, and actually wanted to go into a microbiotic world of the midichlorians if he'd have made the sequels. So, and that's in like this James Cameron documentary that he's just in, and he mentions it. So there's lots of little things where, yeah, George Lucas would have dived ever deeper into the midichlorians, and I actually like them in the prequels to a degree. I'm okay with them, used as a way to show that the Jedi are kind of too sciencey and not spiritual enough, but I don't think they fully work or in that regard. But I want to verbally waterboard everyone with that, because all the midichlorian Force will stuff, there's no real other time to get that philosophical side out in this conversation. So I thought I'd tell you about that and then say, now we can talk about Bane.
So when he's surrounded by all the the ghosts,
yeah.
So, see, I thought that was just like the Sith before the Sith turned on each other and started to kind of kill them. And that's why Bane said, right, rule of two, because then we're not going to have that point of, obviously, you always know that your Padawan at some point is going to kill you. But that's kind of how I thought. I thought it was just all the old Sith there kind of surrounding Yoda.
Yeah, I mean, the Sith, the idea is meant to be that the Sith cannot live on. They can't live immortal like the Jedi can. They can only make themselves live by artificial means, like the way Palpatine is in Rise of Skywalker, the way Vader is, the way Darth Maul is, like half cybernetic, fueled by anger and the Force and things. And so there is one character in Knights of the Old Republic who does live almost immortal, but he's always in like constant pain and he's rotting and all that sort of stuff. I can't remember what his name is. But that's kind of the idea with the Sith. But what you're saying there with seeing the Sith there, I think what the Force priestesses were doing is, because they're essentially eternal, they were kind of Force projecting. So in a way that with The Last Jedi, when we saw Luke Skywalker projecting himself, the way I kind of, again, I think these episodes are very much down to interpretation, but I think what it is the Force priestesses, when he went to Moraband, they kind of used the Force and what the dark energies and imprints of memories on Moraband to project to Yoda what it was like, what it would have been like, what it felt like, the vibes of the Sith being there, and kind of use the imprints of them for that, because that version of Bane is an imprint of Bane, but it's not actually Bane. It's a weird, again, they don't really explain it much. So I want to pass to you, Dave. I want to hear what you think about the Bane episode and Bane. Rule of two, Bane.
It was quite interesting, but I was confused because, I did like the fact that it's a bit of a callback to the lore, that he's created the rule of two and everything. But it almost had, the start of Thor Ragnarok when Thor's sort of tied up and you got that big monster that eventually causes Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Bane sort of had that feel to him, but I wasn't sure what it was supposed to be. If he's the one who's kind of figured this thing out to live on, but you're saying it's not really him, it's just an imprint of him. So what is it that's conjuring him up?
I think it's the Force priestesses kind of pushing Yoda to have a vision on Moraband, I think. Because she says, because after Bane disappears, they say, all of this up to this point, we were helping you, we were guiding you, we were helping you see. But when you enter this room, we can no longer help you. And that's when he goes in the room and Sidious and Dooku put the circle around him and he has that weird vision thing. I think everything up to him interacting with Sidious and Dooku in that circle thing, I think everything up to that point was some form of Force vision brought on by the priestesses, I think. But I think they just knew who Bane was, and they don't really tell Yoda anything he didn't know. Like when he speaks to Bane, he's like, "Oh, you're Bane, you're this." "Yes, I am, I'm this." "Well, I'm not afraid of you because of that." It's not like, "I'm Bane." "Who are you?" "Oh, I created the Rule of Two." "What's that?" He already knew it all. So I think the priestesses were using what he'd already known against him, kind of.
Yeah, and it felt very much like a game, didn't it?
It did,
You
yes.
solve this bit, and then you go on to the next bit. Especially when they were attacking him, he gets through that, then he sees Bane, then he goes through to the next bit, and they're like, "Hey, great stuff! You got through this bit." So yeah, again, I just. I'm almost bipolar in this episode because there's some bits that I really like, but again, it's the priestesses thing that just throws me. But yeah, not enough to pull the episode down for me, but there's still enough in there. But it's just the priestesses, and if you're telling me they manipulated everything to get him there, I might have to rethink how I feel about it. But yeah, it's still a top episode.
Every time I watch it, I think differently. Because originally I didn't clock they were Force priestesses who say, because there's one throwaway line where they go, "Yeah, we can basically do what we're teaching you to do." And I was like, "Oh, so are you not a physical manifestation of the Force? Are you just Force shamans, almost like an order of Force
Jedi
users?" Who've just learnt this thing. I don't know. And I think they've kind of, if we give George Lucas and co the benefit of the doubt, they've kind of left it ambiguous. But before I go to Maff, do you understand, Dave, the Rule of Two? And did this episode make you understand it more or less? I just want to know about that, Dave. Wait, Maff, 1 second. Dave, did you know about the Rule of Two before?
I knew of it. I always get confused by it because, like, okay, if you got Darth Maul in Phantom Menace, well, Dooku was already there.
I think Dooku wasn't technically the apprentice until he was around, and I think Palps was loosely interacting with him. But I think only when Maul dies does Palpatine really focus his energy on Dooku being his actual apprentice. I think before that point, Dooku wasn't a Sith. He was just a fallen Jedi, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
But that's like having Inquisitors.
Well, Asajj Ventress,
in a way.
She's a Sith assassin, The Sith use dark side users towards an acolyte. An acolyte is not... The acolyte is meant to be almost outside the Rule of Two in some respects. It's kind of like a precursor. You're like, you could be my apprentice, but first here's a group... Like in the ancient Jedi, in the ancient Sith ways, they used to have a group of acolytes. And if you were good enough, you'd then get to join the Sith army and fight in the Sith army. But if you weren't quite good enough, you just stay an acolyte. It was like a tier system, but it depends on who you ask, really.
Yeah, I mean, the Rule of Two seems to kind of... It depends how it's going to work at this point in time, because like you say, Darth Maul was supremacist until we get chucked in half. And then Dooku takes over, but it's like he had Dooku just on standby, just in case. He knows that Dooku's questioning the Jedi Order, and he's not happy, so he's easy to manipulate. And at some point, if he does need him to step in, then he can do. And that, I mean, Dooku always feels like he's. I don't think Dooku would ever become the master. Whereas I could have seen Maul do that. Maul's got that wicked side of him of like, yeah, you turn your back at some point, I will screw you over and take over. Whereas Dooku always seems to be, even though the way he holds himself, so scared of the Emperor. So I don't think he would ever really risk taking that because he's like he's always trying to kind of show how good he is to him, and he's always then feeble, thinking, "Oh, sorry, I failed," and that, and even I mean, you look at Grievous as well because like Grievous, he's Sith kind of, but again,
he's not considered. He's not force sensitive at all. So he's again just a tool.
Oh no, because he just uses the mechanics, doesn't he? He's annoyed with the fact that
they are very
got the Force.
They are very hand wavy in the canon, especially in the Clone Wars, with like what Sith is. That's why a lot of people got confused with like Kylo Ren and Snoke. They're like, is he Sith? Is he not? And it's like, really, it's meant to be. The Sith are meant to be. They kind of rule the galaxy. The two of them essentially rule together, and that is what Palpatine and Vader were like, and that is what Maul and Palpatine were going to strive for. And that's what Dooku, I think, had in his head. That Palpatine was going to rule, Dooku would be by his side, and then eventually Palpatine gets so old, Dooku would kill him, and then he'd take on someone, which is really what Palpatine did to Plagueis. So it's just kind of that infinitely.
I mean, when we see Bane, and that, oh, Bane.
Yeah.
I thought Dave was going to do that earlier. It felt like you say, that final boss, oh, this is going to be it. And it's like Yoda's like, yeah, I know who you are. Yeah, I know you all. I know this and that. I'm not scared of you. I'm not really bothered. But then that leads on to Sidious versus Yoda, that's awesome.
Before that fight, though, did you guys notice the link to Rebels? So in the Rebels finale, or the World Between Worlds episode, I should say, Sidious uses the dark side magic, doesn't he? And he uses a very similar dish thing, and he shoots lightning out after Ahsoka and Ezra into the World Between Worlds. In this is the first time you really see him in depth using that kind of Sith magic on screen, where it's like he uses blood magic and all these weird things, and he kind of hexes Yoda and all this kind of stuff. So for me, when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, this is where Star Wars Rebels got the idea of Sidious using dark side magic, is because we see him do it in that. So I just thought that was quite a cool nod. But sorry, Maff.
Yeah, he sees Psycho Diaz as well, who looks a bit crazy.
Dark sidey. Yeah, he's got dark side eyes.
And that can't remember what happens.
Where he walks up to seeing the Sifo Dyas kind of tied up almost and saying, let me out and I'll tell you everything that happened, and Yoda's a bit hesitant. Then he realizes he stood in like a fire circle, and then he wakes up on an LAAT, one of the ships that you see in Attack of the Clones on the Geonosis thing, and he's with Anakin, and they're like, right, we're going to go get Dooku and his master. And you're just like, what? Where the hell am I? What? And Rex is there, and he's like, what's going on? I've seen this episode, and I was watching this, I was going, what the fuck is happening? I was like,
I thought I'd nodded off, actually. So I watched it Saturday night thinking,
I was like, have I missed something? And then it kind of makes sense at the end, and I was like, oh, okay, it was all a vision. I was like, God, this is... And again, for kids, I was like, this is hard going, even for me.
Like the Wizard of Oz, isn't it? Just sort of wakes up. Oh, all a vision. And you were there. And you were there.
What did you think about this, Dave? I know Maff wants to talk about the Sidious Yoda battle, but what did you think of either the Sith magic or the... Did you get confused about the time shifty stuff? But what do you think about the second half of this episode?
I did. And again, just lost in the, is this real? Is this the real people? Is it not kind of... or is it just all a vision? Where my mind was wandering to, though, was about Dooku, and especially the comparisons with Dooku and Maul. And, one of the things we don't see that often, Christopher Lee doesn't have the yellow eyes, does he? He doesn't have the yellow Sith eyes very often. And especially, I'm probably influenced by more things that I've seen after. It seems like Dooku's almost begrudgingly moving towards the dark side, because he's doing it with the best of intentions. So, because he feels like that's the right thing to do, whereas Darth Maul is just full of hatred and just consumed by, especially after he got chopped in half, consumed by thoughts of revenge and stuff. So he's completely yellow-eyed all the time. So. Yeah, but it is interesting though, seeing the interactions with Dooku and the Emperor. He's definitely not the understudy, but almost like the the weakling of the pack, isn't he? Because Palpatine doesn't particularly treat him very nicely.
Dooku's the survivor in a way. He's just doing what he has to do to survive. And then if it's like, I'll go dry clean you.
But we saw the double lightsaber thing, didn't we? Did we not see that? Anakin that was one of Yoda's visions.
Yes.
We saw it kind of off camera a bit, but that was again another interesting premonition.
Yeah, he saw Dooku's execution.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, he didn't see like the exact same, because he didn't see him cut off his hands, but he saw a leg wound, but the leg wound mimics the leg wound that Obi-Wan got from Dooku in the thing. So it's a little bit mixed up, but you're dead right there. I mean, the thing is as well with Dooku is there is one of the Tales of the Jedi, which again, we'll finish once we've done a few more bits and pieces. We'll then watch Revenge of the Sith, and then I'm going to show you the 2 Tales of specials, which we can do in 2 episodes, and one of them is centering around Dooku. I mean, Dave and I think we did Tales of the Jedi a few years back now when it first came out, but that does explain and it goes into the details of Dooku pre-Clone Wars a bit more, and you get to understand his character a lot more. And agreeing with what Dave said, it's like he does begrudgingly kind of join the Emperor, and you do get a little bit of that in the Tales of episodes. So once we finish that, then we'll have more of a complete idea about Dooku, really, in that regard. But yeah, Maff, what do you like so much about Sidious fighting Yoda?
It gives both these old timers chance to kind of shine, and that it's an awesome fight between them, and I mean you've got Anakin and Dooku, which are like the apprentice kind of fighting up on the side, and that because is it Anakin that gets in the leg?
Yeah, what? Sorry,
does Anakin get caught in the leg?
No, in the vision in this episode, yes,
yes,
Anakin hits Dooku in the leg, then Dooku falls to his knees,
right? Yes,
then Anakin executes him. But in the film Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan gets hit in the leg, Dooku force pushes him off, then Anakin fights Dooku one-on-one.
Yeah, and then chops his hand off.
Yeah, and head.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people don't like the whole flipping of the of Yoda bouncing around in the movies, but it works in this and that, and it shows kind of. I mean, it shows how much of a badass the Emperor is, and that. And I think the thing is, you need to have that to a certain degree, because if not, it's all right him having all these plans, but if he can't back it up at some point, then you get to a point where it's all right. You're not as scary as what you're making out. The fact that he force shows Anakin, doesn't he?
In the vision, yeah, which he could easily do.
Yeah, I mean, I said in the previous episode, like when he kind of started force choking Dooku and that. But this, when he picks Anakin up and he starts force choking him, then the whole lightning and everything else that's going on. It's just, again, it's that badass kind of side of them both going hammer and tongs at each other, and that. But then you've then got Yoda having to kind of not being able to do it all because he's trying to save Anakin, and
I wanted to mention that the whole bit where it's Yoda as Anakin starts to fall, and then Sidious is basically there saying, "Are you going to let him die, or are you going to try and save him? And if you save him, my plan will succeed." And it's subtle, and Yoda obviously doesn't quite fully clock it, but it's literally going, if you actually killed Anakin, you'd probably save the galaxy. Yeah. But you don't have the perspective. Yoda, obviously, either he doesn't fully comprehend, because in his Force visions where he sees Order 66, he doesn't see Anakin killing the Jedi. He sees someone killing the Jedi. He doesn't, I think he still doesn't quite get it's Anakin. And I think that's a hint, like Sidious's hint almost, but Yoda still hasn't quite got that. Because I think a lot of people, they sense a bit of darkness in Anakin, but obviously, as most people think, yeah, he might get a bit angry sometimes, but it's not the same as slaughtering a whole religious sect. So I think...
Or room full of younglings.
Well, that's it. But Dave, did you feel that similarly about the Sidious Yoda fight? What do you think about all that?
No, it was good. I'm just actually rewatching it as we're talking there. It's some really good action. And I agree with Math. I think in Attack of the Clones, when Yoda's jumping around there's something off about the animation. But
Do you
for
know what it
this,
is? I think, if I remember rightly, Yoda's bouncing around a lot, whereas
Dooku.
Dooku is fighting. Dooku's not.
mm,
Dooku's, he's limited Christopher Lee to what he can do. And that even if you got a stunt double, whereas
mm,
animation, they're both bouncing. They're both kind of at it against each other. So it flows better. Whereas, I say in the films, they're a bit limited to how much they can move Yoda as much as they want, but an actual
mm,
actor is limitations.
I think that's a good point.
yeah, no, it does. It just looks really good, and it looks like it has real weight to it, to the animation, and so no, it is really good. And that kind of conflict, like you say, it's you can let Anakin survive or just let him go or whatever. It's almost like he's playing with Yoda a little bit there, isn't he? Because he knows he's never going to do that, but he's sort of throwing out that breadcrumb. I still think, saying about what could Yoda do. Well, I mean, he could have at least said, "Hey guys, have a backup plan." If I had this vision.
I agree, but
Do
I
you
would
thi-
put the argument in that I think this takes place so close to Revenge of the Sith, and I think when we watch the 7th season, I think this is within a few months of Revenge of the Sith, and I think at this point Yoda starts going, "I need a fucking backup plan," and I genuinely think now retroactively they've kind of gone, because when you see season 7, Yoda's not really in it much, and I think you could almost argue he was starting to plan stuff because like in Revenge of the Sith, again, Maff hasn't seen it in a long while, so it's going to be fun him revisiting this. But like when Order 66 happens, he doesn't get caught out by it. He feels it happen. He turns as the order comes in and the clone troopers get the order. They turn and he decapitates them like that. He does not hesitate, and no other Jedi reacts like that. Even Obi-Wan's like, "God, my clones want to attack me." Yoda full on decapitates his two like besties like that. And when he does that, he immediately gets a plan, goes and he's like, "Right, I've got a plan. We need to go here, turn the Jedi beacon thingamajig off." Then he talks to Bail Organa, and it's like, "Right, I need to go into exile. I need to go to Dagobah." Boom, and it's kind of like. And he actually quite organized, and he says to Obi-Wan, "You need to go to Tatooine, you need to take the kids." And it's like, how did you know all this? And I think only just now on this rewatch, I'm like, actually, I think his whole perspective changed in this. And he went, "I can no longer think about fighting the war." Because he does say a line in this, which he does say, "My perception about war has changed. I don't think one can win a war." So I think he's basically gone, we've essentially already lost.
Well,
There's no point even trying anymore.
The thing is, he's been told what will be, and it has to play out. So it's like, "I'll get my travel bag ready."
I don't disagree at all.
But like, going back to the fight, the bit where it's like you could let Anakin fall, and that, and like the Emperor's he's electrocuting him, I think.
Yeah.
I think
He's got his lightsaber though, and he.
Yeah, one lightsaber up, holding it back.
There's a point. He puts the lightsaber down or away.
Yeah, he does hold. He does hold the power at one point, like he does in Revenge of the Sith.
He moves Anakin to the side. If he chose to let Anakin fall at that point, then that puts doubt and maybe the dark side into Yoda. You've then corrupted probably the most purest Jedi that's around at the moment. So then, again, the Emperor's kind of win-win.
Well, if Yoda gave up on Anakin, he would fall to the dark side even sooner. And there's a line here which Sidious and Dooku say. Sidious says to Dooku, "We failed to break Yoda. We have to basically wait a bit longer." So this shows that really they could. I mean, the thing is, Order 66 is that we think of it as Order 66 happened because Mace Windu died, and no, Order 66 happened because Palpatine said execute Order 66. He can do it. The whole of the Clone Wars, including now in this episode, he could have activated Order 66 whenever he wanted, but he wants the Jedi Order at the most vulnerable. So if this is his attempt, like if we can derail Yoda, Perfect time to activate Order 66, because it's like him and Mace are the two big boys we need to get down, then we can wipe out the rest of them. So this really was actually an attempt to start Order 66, but because Yoda's resilience, as you said, Maff, because he would basically grabbed Sidious and was like, I will take you with me. I'll jump off this building holding you and we'll die together. That act is something that fended off Sidious. And I think that, again, is very much shows what Yoda did at the end. He went and lived on Dagobah for like 20 years by himself just so he could train Luke for like, I think it's like loosely a few weeks maybe, just to give him barely enough information to be able to beat Vader. So sorry, Dave, I took the point off you. Back to you on the finale of this.
No, I think I was done.
Anything else to add?
No, I think the reason you asked at the top, how would I feel if this was the end of the Clone Wars? To me, it's all about Anakin Skywalker, and then they introduced, obviously, you've got Obi-Wan as his kind of mentor, brother and whatever, and then they introduced Ahsoka as well. So it kind of feels like those trio, the arc needs to finish with them. So I do hear what you're saying. There's like almost like an infinite a bunch of threads that you could take with the story, and it's always, one of the great things about the movies was, it stopped. And then there was clearly a whole bunch of stuff that happened. And then the next movie starts and you're like, what the fuck? How did we get here? So there's always those spaces in between. But I feel like it needed to come back to Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan a lot more. And so just finishing off with Yoda, it does feel like a series end or season end, as opposed to the whole series end.
Yeah, like an ending, not a finale almost.
Yeah. I mean, if you're saying Yoda's not in season 7 books.
Season 7 is very focused. Very focused. I won't say necessarily. I gave you hints of it a few episodes ago, but I won't give you any more than that.
Then that kind of, again, it adds to where this finishes, because then Yoda does have to go off and kind of get himself trained and ready for what's to come next. And that. So I think, in a way, it's quite clever that they've done it this way. They've got it so that Yoda... Otherwise, there's still that issue without watching the Clone Wars. When you just watch films, Anakin just switch. It doesn't work. How can he fall so quickly? Whereas as you watch the Clone Wars, we've said many times, Anakin's more. He gets better results when he taps into the dark side, and slowly that eats away to the point where. It's like drug to him in a way. He knows that he can get a bit more power, he can get more stuff done. And in his mind, he's for the greater good. So it's fine if I do. And, some other Jedi's do it when it suits them as well. So watching the Clone Wars, and as I say, when I do go watch Revenge of the Sith, it adds so much more to it, because then it's filling out that stuff where, like, all right, we know Anakin turns into Vader, and fair enough, he's just swapped. He's just killed a load of younglings. Why? But why did they kill a load of younglings? It didn't really make sense. But that fall now feels more better with watching these.
Agreed, and also. And season 7 helps that a bit more as well. But I'll say when we watch Revenge of the Sith, I do have quite a few good defenses of little subtle reasons. There is some very clever stuff Lucas did in Revenge of the Sith. Very clever repeated dialogue. But the problem is, it's so clever and so subtle, you generally don't notice it. But if someone points it out to you, you go, holy fuck. There's two identical dialogue lines, basically, that Palpatine and Mace Windu both say at the two ends of the film. And that's one of the things which actually a really clever thing of if both Palpatine and Mace Windu are saying the same thing, but Palpatine is saying, I'll save your wife, and you think Mace is going to not let you be with her, you're going to choose Palpatine. And that's one of the clever things, which I'll get into when we watch the film eventually. But I've got a couple of things to talk about before we finish up this episode. But Maff, is there anything you want to mention about these 3 episodes or the finale of season 6 before I do the homework and what's to come and the little surprise? Oh, you've muted yourself.
Muted. Okay. We did say off air. How many of the council members can you name?
Do you want to try first, Dave, and then I'll go?
What did I say? So Obi-Wan, Yoda, Mace Windu. You've mentioned him about 5 times. The knobhead. I can't remember. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, so are you ready with the list, Maff?
I ain't got the list. I'll just.
Oh, you're gonna look. Okay, so we've got. I'll do it on my hands.
Well, there's one that I think I'm wrong.
Okay.
Is it Farah's Bar?
Farron Bar.
Guy.
Farron Bar. Is he the one from the?
He's from the Vader comics.
Yeah, you're thinking of Saesee Tiin. Saesee Tiin. He's the one, same species, Iktok-Chi.
Right.
So there's 12 members of the Jedi Council.
I've got a couple of us. Sorry.
So the Jedi Council we've got, right, out of 12, we've got Yoda, Mace, Obi-Wan, Kaidi-Mundi. So that's the 4.
Shakti.
Well, Shakti's one. Yep, we got her. We've got Eth Koth, who I think at this sort of time he leaves the Jedi Council and he gets replaced by Ajan Kolar at the time of Revenge of the Sith. Yaro Poof has left, who's a Quirmium. He's no longer in it. Oppo Rancisis is, and he's in this episode right at the end. He's got long hair and like a snake body. That's Oppo Rancisis. He's been around for hundreds of years. He's in the High Republic.
Plo Koon.
Plo Koon's another one. Very good. Kit Fisto is another one. I believe Adi Gallia was, and she gets killed in the Maul episode. So she gets replaced by someone who I can't remember. So that's most of them. But also, even Piel, he was on the council. He's the short dude with the big ears that got killed in the Citadel arc. He was on the council.
Did he look like a goblin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. You've got Depa Billaba, Kanan Jarrus's master. She's on the council. You've got, at the time of Revenge of the Sith, very briefly, you've got Anakin Skywalker. Kit Fisto is, we said Saesee Tiin. I think that's...
Jocasta, is she?
No, she's the archivist for the library. Yaddle, she was on the council, but she's mysteriously not around in the Clone Wars. I wonder why that is. Well, we will find out. But it kind of depends. Because throughout the Clone Wars, certain Jedi Masters do get killed. So it kind of depends where you're asking the council is. I can tell you after Order 66, there's no one on the council, except technically Darth Vader, because he's the last person on the council, because he killed everyone else. With him, Yoda, and Obi-Wan.
Not a master, though, is he?
Well, no, exactly. Only a master of evil, Darth. But is that very, very nice, Maff? That was good. Trying to get my my trivia up, and then I went in there with loads of caveats.
So, Ferren Bar, was he just...
He was just a Padawan, and then when Order 66 happened, he basically just pretended to be a master, really, for the Darth Vader comics, for in those. But is there anything else you want to mention about these episodes, Maff, before I give the homework and secret thing?
You mentioned before, the person who wrote this, is that the same person who wrote...
the Mortis arc.
Mortis arc, right.
Yes.
He had that feel to it as well.
Yeah, the spiritual side of the Force.
Yeah, which I know Dave loved.
Well, Dave liked these ones a bit, but beat him. How do you rank them, actually? Do you think these are some of the best? Do you agree more with Dave? They're kind of B class? How do you kind of vibe with these 3 episodes?
I think Dave's right. It's that with knowing what's to come, and that I think it works really well because it kind of does tie up certain things that you can question. So they're not top tier. They're no... oh god, I don't know, my brain's gone blank. But like some of the greater episodes, I think when we do kind of a wrap up of the Clone Wars, this possibly is not going to hit it, and that like the Evil General and the
on the Umbaran arc. Yeah, I don't think this is top tier. I think this is quite important, and it's very good lore heavy. It's very good for the lore of Star Wars. But especially teaching people about the Sith and the Rule of Two and all that, like it's quite a quick. It's like, right, here's the Rule of Two, and here's Force Ghosts, and here's Yoda, and here's Qui-Gon Jinn. You're like, whoa, Force priestesses and shit.
Exposition.
Yeah, it's very, very exposition heavy, but in a lore sense. But yeah. So if we're ready to go, I've got 2 little things to add. So I did tell you guys that because we're season 6, the next thing technically canonically to read is the Son of Dathomir comic, which is true. But I have found and I've known about these for a while and I've never watched them, but I've mentioned them a little bit over the season, and I wasn't set if we were going to watch them or not because I didn't know how hard they'd be to find or how valid they were. But so this season got cancelled. It got cut in half. There are 8 episodes which were fully voice acted, fully animated, but weren't released because the last stage of animation wasn't finished. So they look like PlayStation 1 graphics. Okay, there's 8 of them. 4 of them make up the arc The Bad Batch, which got remade into The Bad Batch arc, which is the first 4 episodes of Season 7. The first 4, however, which is the Crisis on Utapau and the Crystal arc, is 4 episodes. They've not been remade. They're not in any comics, they're not in any books, they're not in Season 7. But they are considered canon, they're fully voice acted, and I have never seen them. Now, I avoided them for a while because A, the animation style is very janky, and on the link, I'll share screen with the listeners so they can see what I'm on about. But it's very, very janky animation style, so I kind of avoided them. But I did a bit of research recently just to see, are they actually worth it? Are they good? Because I didn't hear amazing things. Apparently, they're really good. They're rated quite high, even though the reviews on IMDb, there's only a few hundred of them. But I thought it'd be really good for us to do that because I think a lot of our listeners either don't know about it or, like me, I'm a massive Die Hard Star Wars fan. I've never watched these, ever. And they are considered canon. So what I'm going to do is, when we come back, we'll do the Son of Dathomir comic next. But over the holidays, we can also watch these 4 episodes. And I found a YouTube thing, which is just all 4 of them put together. So it's quite easy. It's an hour and 20 minutes long. So it's basically like a movie. And again, I've never seen them. It's an Obi-Wan and Anakin adventure. And it is set after these episodes as well. So I'm quite interested to see what they're like and to see some of this stuff about Obi-Wan Anakin that I've never seen. And again, more connection to Revenge of the Sith, because Utapau is where Obi-Wan goes to fight Grievous, and that's where he defeats Grievous, and that's where he is when Order 66 happens. So they do go there first in the Clone Wars. So that and Son of Dathomir are going to be the 2 things we focus on next. Once we've done both of those, then we'll be able to go into Season 7. So I'm sorry, Maff, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But I want to show you guys what it looks like, and I'll put a link in the description because I mean, this video was up 2 years ago. It's got 230,000 views. No one's ever taken it down. So I think Disney Lucasfilm are okay with it. And Disney Lucasfilm did officially release these on the Star Wars website. So they were released for people to watch. So I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see the animation style. And I'll share my audio as well so you can hear that it is genuinely fully voice acted and everything like that. So
this is going to be a watch party.
I mean, it's not going to be fully a watch party, but it is going to be a brief thing. So let's go on to the actual, here it is, the unreleased Star Wars thing, and share sound. Let's go into it. So you should be able to see my screen with the thumbnail. So I'll play this, and I'll skip it a little bit. So can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
So it's the actual voice acting and everything, but you can see the animation style.
I've just built that spaceship.
Did you? Well, now it's an advert, which is not quite as exciting for Amazon, which I didn't want to show, which is not as exciting, but it's about 8 seconds. So as long as it takes me to come out of it, go back in. So there we go, free Amazon advert. But look, so it's like this. So there's no mouth moving, no lip sync, anything like that. So I'll stop it there. But I'd never seen that. But hour and a half long, apparently they're really good, and they are canon, and they are set before Season 7. And directly after these is The Bad Batch, which they have remade for some reason. And everyone literally in the comments is like, why have they not just redone these? So that was the little secret thing. There's actually going to be 4 more episodes of Clone Wars to watch before we get into Season 7. I'm so sorry, Maff, but I've never seen these before. So
is there a jump in animation quality when you're in Season 7 from this?
Oh, yes. I mean, this will make Season 7 animation look even more insane because Season 7 animation is obviously made after Rebels. So it's the art style and the animation jump of Season 7 is phenomenal because it was made in 2020, 6 years after Season 6 was made of the episodes we were talking about this week. But yes, friends, that is it for this episode. Just very quick plugs. This is going to be coming out, I think, in January sort of time. So usual stuff, back to filmography from me. I've been on a couple of Spider-Dan pods, and also I recently did a interview with Charles Soule and Ryan Brown. Charles Soule is obviously one of the big Star Wars authors I really like. Wherever you're listening, you'll be able to find it. Links in the description. I'm sure there'll be some other stuff coming out, and you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat. Maff, what have you got going on? I know you're on 20th Century Geek. You're appearing on Spider-Dan and back to filmography. Is there much else going on your radar that you can talk about?
Skeleton Crew with you.
Yes, I'll do the weekly Skeleton Crew discussion shows. How could I forget? Very good.
I think that's it.
That's it for now. And then Dave, where can people find you? What other pods you doing?
So, usual VHS Strikes Back. No idea what we'll be doing in January by the time this one comes out. I think we're covering Maths Australia on the CD Reality Cast. We will be doing so. Spider-Dan, myself, and Max Byrne will be doing a rerun through the Age of Apocalypse arc. So that'll be a lot of fun. So we're just putting that together. I think that will come out on the Spider-Dan feed, Spider-Dan and the Secret Boars. Mm-hmm. So yeah, looking forward to that one in the new year.
Amazing stuff. So yeah, lots of collaborations we're doing, lots of Star Wars content, Skeleton Crew, Clone Wars conversations, and many things to come after that, and as much content as we can fill your podcast feeds with. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment wherever you're listening or watching, please. And obviously, I've got to say it, of course, may the Force be with you.
And be with you.
You have just experienced host, creator, everything elser of Genuine Chit-Chat, and also the host and creator of Star Wars comics and canon, found on the Comics in Motion podcast, Mike Burton.